it's been an incredible comeback story you've had over the last few years. Obviously suffered 3 losses in a row, had a bad injury against in the Khalil Roundtree fight, and then was subsequently cut from the UFC after that.
It was a very horrible time. Like, I was definitely depressed. I was pretty much drinking myself to sleep most nights. Like, time was just passing me by, and I felt like, my big opportunity has just been completely tarnished. There was just a switch in my head that said, I'm going to prove everyone wrong. Everyone who's counted me out, everyone who said that I would be no good, or that I'll never make it and stuff like this. It's just, this is like a massive F you to all you guys. You know what I mean? Ultimately, it was down to me to show that I'm UFC caliber, and ultimately that's what I did when I came back to Cage Warriors. Had some tough competition, but we got the job done. I get a video call from my manager, and then he goes, "Well, you're fighting in Australia in 2 weeks' time." I'm like, "What?" He says, "You're back in the UFC, mate."
So today we're joined by UFC light heavyweight Modestas Bukauskas. Thanks for joining us on talkSPORT MMA.
No worries, mate. My pleasure.
So you'll be fighting against Rafael Sequeira on February 22nd in Seattle, Washington. How's your camp been going?
It's been going very well. I've been getting some absolutely amazing training. I feel like, especially with this camp, I'm sort of, I'll definitely be peaking around the right time, or the time right before the fight. Because my last fight in Manchester in July, I'd sort of already been training since January. So I was just training, and then it was almost like a very long sort of extended camp, I guess you could say. Whereas now I sort of feel like, and not to say that I probably peaked too early, because I always like to try and stay in good shape, but I feel like now it's like I'm definitely getting towards the peak and the height of all my abilities and my skill sets and my strength and my cardio, all at the right time, leading up to this fight. And I've been getting some really good work in with the lads down at Tom Aspinall's gym with his dad. You got Mick Park in there, you got Ante Delia, you got a whole host of like amazing athletes and great fighters. So I'm getting some really good work out there, some really huge geezers as well. Do you know what I mean? It's not often that I'm the smallest guy in the room, but they're very welcoming. I've been getting some great training in there, and they're helping me out for my fight. So like I say, I'm really grateful for them. And obviously my dad as well. So yeah, the training's been going absolutely amazing. I'm feeling in really good shape.
And how do you see this fight going?
I see myself getting the finish. There is no other way. You know what I mean? I need to go out there and put it on him, put on the pressure, and show the world exactly who the hell I am. You know what I mean? Last performance was good, but obviously I had my little scare in the middle of the fight with the head kick. No mistakes. It's just got to be clinical. Got to go in there and do my job. You know what I mean? Obviously, I know Sequeira is a very tough opponent, but at the end of the day, it's for me to go out there. I need to go and finish this guy.
Yeah, and he's only had one fight in the UFC, which has been a loss so far, but he's got a decent record. How do you think your experience is going to play a factor in this one?
Yeah, well, I expect him to come out all guns blazing, because obviously, coming off of a loss in his UFC debut, he really wants to make a stamp on that and say, well, listen, that's not everything that I can do. So obviously, I can expect him to come out, really preparing really hard for this one, to come out the best Sequeira that we've seen. Obviously, he's a good athlete, but I feel like my skill set in every single area is better than his. He's got a good kickboxing style, switches stances and stuff like this, but so do I. You know what I mean? I've been working tirelessly on improving all of the holes in my game and stuff like this, or holes that I see myself in my game. And ultimately I look to implement everything and just put it on him at the end of the day. You got to go out there, you got to be aggressive, and yeah, man, you got to put on a show for the fans. So that's exactly what I'm going to do.
So if all goes to plan, sounds like you're predicting the knockout. Do you have somebody in mind that you want to call out next?
I'm going to save that for after the fight.
Nice.
Save that for after the fight, because, like I say, ultimately the thing that needs to be done is the job needs to get done. I need to go in and put this, go out and put this man away. But the call out that I'm saving for this one, it's gonna, like I say, it's gonna be a special one, and it's definitely gonna bring some noise out there. So, like I say, I'm looking forward to go out, put on a performance, and letting the story unfold.
Oh yeah, love that, exciting. And so obviously UFC London's coming up shortly after your scheduled bout. Is that something? Did you want to get onto that card, or it's just the way the opponents fell?
Yeah, obviously, I wanted to fight on that card. Well, I sort of expected to be fighting on that card, but obviously UFC had different plans for me. At first, I thought, well, surely I should have been on that card since there was quite a good reception from me being on the UK card the last time. But I look at this actually as like a blessing because this is now my, I fought at the Apex, but that's not quite like fighting in front of a crowd in the US. So will be my first fight. Well, you could really essentially call this my US debut because it's my first fight in front of a crowd in the USA. And do you know what I mean? And all the big stars that tend to come out of the UFC always, sort of do well in America. So this is my chance to sort of put my skills and my talents on show to the world and to the American public. And then, like I say, it just bodes well for bigger things in the future. So. Yeah, man. All I got to do is just go out there and put on a good performance.
And obviously, this has been it's been an incredible comeback story you've had over the last few years. In 2021, obviously suffered 3 losses in a row, had a bad injury against in the Khalil Roundtree fight, and then were subsequently cut from the UFC after that. Just do you want to tell us a bit about that period?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was probably the darkest time in my life. I had to make a lot of changes, not only in sort of my training and the way that I was fighting and the skills that I was sort of trying to implement and stuff like this, but like personal life, like mentally, I had to change a lot of things. The way that I approach things, you just realize that the world's a lot darker than what you sort of initially think, or you always try and look towards the good side of things, but do you know what? It's almost like Will Curry, another one of my good friends. He would always talk about red and blue lightsaber, and he said, "Modestas, you're a bit too blue lightsaber." For anyone who doesn't know Star Wars, the reference basically is that red lightsabers sort of just like it's sort of like like I say, the dark side in people. Being very aggressive, being very vicious, like sort of being almost like quite selfish as well. And then you got the being courteous, kind, polite, sweet, and this being blue lightsaber. So I think dipping into the red side has definitely helped me in fighting and just in life in general. You realize that you know not everyone's out there for your best interests. You realize in not just in the fight game, but outside of it and stuff like this. So you just gotta sort of tackle the world in a completely different way, and that was one of the things that I really sort of started implementing after that loss, which helped me, to make the comeback that I did. And what kind of crap story would it be if it would have just ended right there? You know what I mean? Oh, Modestas, yeah, Cage Warriors champion, got to the UFC, cut, done. Do you know what I mean? Like that would have been a crap story. So, for me to keep that going, that was always a massive motivation for me. It's like imagine when I'm looking back at this, and I said that all these things were going to happen, and then they do happen. That's going to be a story worth telling. So, there was a lot of big motivations behind it.
And so when you're obviously you would have been injured, I've obviously sitting down for days on end. Just and is that how you kept yourself motivated? It was that I'm not letting my career be that
Yeah,
story.
yeah. So, well, like I said, it was a very horrible time. Like I was definitely depressed. I was pretty much drinking myself to sleep most nights. It was a time where I just didn't want to be in the real world. I wanted to be in some sort of fairy tale land that didn't have to be in reality. I just wanted to get away from reality. That's why, like I say, I resorted a little bit to drinking and stuff like this. No one knew about it. I was just, just doing it myself, and I just felt like like time was just passing me by, and I felt like my big opportunity has just been completely tarnished. But yeah, realistically, everything that I was doing was like, do you know what? I'm gonna come back. I tried to stay like positive and motivated, and then obviously the UFC cut me, and then that's when like I say, there was just a switch in my head that said I'm going to prove everyone wrong. Everyone who's counting me out, everyone who said that I would be no good or that I'll never make it and stuff like this. It's just this is like a massive F you to all you guys, you know what I mean? So I use a lot of things to fuel my fire on my comeback. But obviously it was tough mentally. I was just not in a great place. But like I mentioned, to look back on this knowing that I would have said that I was going to come back and do all these things, that was extremely motivating for me. And slowly, day by day, things were just getting slowly better. My knee was making amends. The physio was working. My leg was getting stronger. I was getting back to doing backflips. I was getting back to doing wrestling. Like all sorts of things were just coming together. And then you just keep building on top of that. You got to take it. What I notice is if you look at it from me being back from me, getting cut and then getting back to the UFC. If you look at it like, I need to get back into the UFC, you're not going to get nowhere. You need to literally take it day by day, and that's essentially what I did. It's like all the things that I can control was just to take things day by day, and that's exactly what I did.
Once you could start competing again, you found yourself back at Cage Warriors. Did you feel it was more of a positive than a negative? Obviously, great to be competing again, but somewhat of a step back in the career.
Well, yeah, of course. I think everyone and anyone who's in that position would feel that way. Going from the UFC and then coming back to Cage Warriors, you see a lot of guys who then be almost becoming a UFC veteran. It's like it's not my time to be a UFC veteran yet. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, I knew that's where I ultimately was going to go, and there's been cases where guys have went back and then got back in and suffer this from being in other promotions. So Cage War is such a massive platform. So yeah, and you're going to get very tough competition in Cage War. So ultimately, if I'm ready for it, I've got to go and prove myself, and then there we go. We can make things happen. So everything was set out and planned out the way that it should have gone, and ultimately it was down to me to show that I'm UFC caliber, and ultimately that's what I did when I came back to Cage Warriors. Had some tough competition, but we got the job done and we got the call back.
And so tell us a bit about that call back, because it was a short notice fight against
Yeah.
Tyson Pedro. So yeah, just tell us about that.
Yeah.
That call.
So a lot of people don't know, but on the day that number one, I'll start with this. So obviously, I was continuing training, just doing my thing, and past New Year's and this and that, and then I can't remember at what point in January. It must have been like mid-January. Like me and my friend Will, again referring back to Will, we went out on a night out and got absolutely hammered. Yeah, got almost it was bad. But it was a good night. But do you know what I mean? Like we got pretty wasted, and then on I went back to training, everything on Monday like normal, Tuesday like normal, and then Wednesday and this whole time I'm thinking it's now been like literally 2.5 weeks since the Chuck Campbell knockout. I'm thinking, surely there should be some sort of call coming now, and my manager calls me and says you're going to be defending your Cage Warriors belt in March. I was like, and at first when I heard that I was like, yeah, it wouldn't be nice to fight in the UFC, but I was like, do you know what? At the end of the day, it is what it is. I've got to do what I've got to do. Another name, another body. Go and defend it, and build my resume even more. Then make them want me even more. Then, and I went to training as normal. I did my whole day as normal, and then it got to about 10 o'clock at night. And around where I live, there's absolutely no signal. Like literally, you get about 5 minute radius from my house, you just can't get any signal. So, like I say, this must have been like some sort of heaven sent, because I was driving down these country lanes, and then I get a video call from my manager. And normally I don't get video calls, but at this point, I was thinking, what, has the guy pulled out now, or what's going on? I literally swerved, pulled over to the side of the road, and he goes, yo, Modest, how you doing? So I was, yeah, I'm not too bad, just coming back from training. What's your weight looking like? I said, I'm not too crazy. I think I was about 219, maybe 218 at the time. I said, so yeah, I'm in shape. I'm not fat, so that's a good thing. And then he goes, well, you're fighting in February in 2 weeks. You're fighting in Australia in 2 weeks' time. I'm like, what? He says, you're back in the UFC, mate. And I was just like, I said, no, you got to be kidding me. And then he goes, no, you're fighting Tyson Pedro in Australia. I was like, as soon as he said that, I was just like, complete rush of emotions. like I say, I was tearing up and like screaming and like, do you know what I mean? I was like, the first thing I said was like, I ain't gonna let you down, bro. We're gonna get this win. And then I was literally driving the last 5 minutes back to my house, playing like some Witcher like freaking war music, and just like screaming at the top of my lungs. And then I remember I got back to my house and like I was like I felt like very disorientated. I almost felt like I was in a dream. Like I felt like I was not necessarily like drunk, but I felt like weird. Like I felt like really lightheaded. And then I went upstairs, and it was just like a really surreal moment. And then I ran upstairs. Obviously, I told my stepmom, like, listen, just wait in the sitting room. I've got to tell you something. And then I go to my dad's room. He's like literally half asleep. And he goes, and I go, Dad, like, come on, you got to get to the sitting room. He goes, what the fuck? Like, I just got into bed. And I'm just like, oh no. Don't worry, mate. This one's going to be a good piece of news. You're going to want to get out of bed for this. And then, next thing you know, we're in the sitting room, and I tell them that we're back in the UFC, and then we're fighting in Australia. And then the first thing my dad goes, "Oh bloody hell, we're going to Australia." I mean, so it was honestly, it was just a mad moment. Obviously, then we were like jumping and like obviously hugging each other, and and then obviously I just couldn't sleep the whole night after that. So, but yeah, it was a crazy moment. But like I said, I knew that was what was meant for me. Just kept believing in it, and I just realized that all the things that I was writing on my board and all the things that I was wishing on, they were starting to come true again. So I just believe that was all part of my path.
And there was no hesitation about taking that Tyson
Oh no,
Pedro on
not at
2
all.
weeks. That's mad, isn't it? Absolutely mad.
Yeah.
And like I said, it all adds to this incredible comeback story this journey that you're creating. So it's a great story. And so you obviously mentioned about your vision board where you put your dreams and your aspirations. But what's on there right now? What are those goals?
So there's a couple of things. You know what I mean? Some things that I probably can't mention. Some things that I've got to be kept a bit secret. But obviously, it's no secret that I'm going in there to beat Sequeira impressively, go show the world who the hell I am, and put myself up for some big fights. I want to get into that top 15. You know what I mean? I believe that with a couple of big wins, I'll be there by the end of this year. So that's one of the things, is to be fighting guys within the top 15 by the end of this year and be within the top 15, and like I want to be fighting for the belt by the time I'm 32. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to be turning 31 soon, but within the time, maybe just before I'm 33. But when I'm 32, that's when I'm looking to be fighting for the belt. So these are things that are kind of more long term, but obviously short term. All over the bottom half of my board is obviously beating Sequeira. Feed the faith, starve the doubt. Marvin Hagler said that a lot, but that's pretty much what I'm doing in this camp. No distractions, living very simplistically, but everything leading towards the ultimate goal. I feel like I've become a lot more professional as my time has gone on. I could have used the being professional a bit earlier on in my career, but do you know what? I feel that's all part of the learning curve, and like I said, certain things had to happen in order for me to realize, and now I'm starting to implement them. So, that's why I'm feeling very good about this fight.
And there's been a lot of movement in your division, light heavyweight, over the last few years. There's been a lot of talk around current champ Alex Pereira sort of cementing himself as one of the pound for pound greats of the sort of current roster and potentially across the light heavyweight division. Where do you rank his accomplishments over the last couple of years?
Pereira?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's very inspiring because at 34 enters the UFC, and he's 37 now and he's already a double champ. He's done a hell of a lot in such a short space of time. Ultimately, that's who you got to see yourself as facing. You know what I mean? If you're going to want to fight for the belt at light heavyweight, that's the guy that you got to take out. So he's done an incredible job. I think he's done the best out of any of the light heavyweights. Do you know what I mean? Just like basically taking it to them, like adapting to all styles. Yeah, I mean, it's quite, like I said, it's just very very motivating and inspiring to see someone do that, to come from where he's come from, to achieve that much. It's just, just shows you put your mind to it, you play towards your strength, and you can make things happen. So obviously, fair play to him.
Yeah. Do you see him as one of the pound for pound greats at the moment?
Yeah, definitely within the pound for pound rankings, he's definitely up there towards the top for sure. Um, like I say, especially the fact that he's got belts over 2 weight classes as well, so that definitely solidifies it even more for him.
Yeah, yeah. And so, just finally, for maybe people who maybe don't know yourself, haven't seen your fights, what is your favourite fight? And it's something that you would your best fight that you could show somebody.
Well, aside from it's weird because although people, I got quite a good reaction from my last fight. I don't think it was
Mm.
my best fight. I think my fight against Tyson Pedro was probably my best. But I think stylistically, over 3 rounds, and the things that I was able to do, and the things I was able to implement in that fight, I think showed most of my skill sets. I think that was one of my best fights.
Yeah, yeah, it was a great performance. Um, well, thanks so much for joining us, Modestas. It's been great chatting to you, and yeah, excited for February 22nd. Hope it all goes well, and yeah, maybe we'll get to chat to you after the big victory.
My man, 100%. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And like I say, always good talking to you, mate.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app, and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.